不管是说一个国跟一个国，在我们美国本国内也是人跟人之间看一个情况下，很多是趋势是不一致的。在中国国内也是很多人看到，就是说一个趋势对一个信息同样的信息来源，为什么他们看法是不一致的？在这种样情况下，我们的责任是什么？我觉得最重要的一个责任是能理解我跟你之间我们有什么样的价值观，我们的价值观是一致的还是不是一致的？我想生活的社会跟你想生活的社会是同样的社会吗？还是不是同样的社会？在21世纪，我们地球已经这么小了，不可能完全说只要我把我家管好，只要你把你家管好，我们两个在这个小社区内不会有什么样的影响。我觉得我们疫情我们可以看到，就是说即使我把我家管好，别家管得怎么样，还是对我来说有带来一些影响。所以在这种情况下，国跟国之间的关系也是一样的，人跟人之间的关系也一样的。你们交流可以谈到这个会议主要4个重要话题 ：AI、Space、Biotechnology 这些emerging technologies。不过最重要还是要理解精英和人跟人之间的价值观。你想生活的社会是怎么样？你想获得的信息是从什么样的来源？你想控制的信息是从什么样的情况来控制？你想获得的从政府来的一些帮助一些补贴是什么样的？不允许的又是什么样的？这种样的问题就是回到人，不管是在21世纪，还是在第1世纪，还是在31世纪，还是都是面对的一种样的共同问题。所以我们在非中心中心，我们现在有个新的 series 叫 Common Civilizational Questions，就是共同的这些文化问题所以我觉得这是最重要的。今天我想指的就是说，我觉得你们这些工作在这个方面不管是这一些话题、这些共同点、这些合作是重要的，而是人跟人之间的这个价值观是一致不一致，这是一个最根点的一个问题。如果是不一致，还是能生活在下去；如果是一致，那当然就是说合作的这个可能性越来越大。不过我觉得这是最重要的一个，希望大多数的学生们都能以后跟美方跟西方各种的精英都有这个机会来多谈谈这一些话题。Let me just quickly summarize in English. What I expressed in Mandarin was simply the fact that I think we live in a time when it's easy for us to talk about cooperation. The nature of U.S.-China cooperation is certainly very important. But we live in a time where we have very different perceptions. It's important to ask ourselves, why is it that hardly anyone at Harvard or in the US side perceives the balloon to be an errant meteorological balloon that drifted into US airspace and rather believes for it to be a spy balloon? Why is it that, as I shared an anecdote about my last weekend, I attended a conference in Maine full of people who had spent time in China. Why is it that even though they understand the benefits of cooperation and of trade, they are concerned about China emerging as the most important trading partner? Why is this the case? And I think we can talk about the emerging technologies, we can talk about these critical issues, but the most important thing for us to do is to have a discussion about values and understand whether or not we share common values. If we share those common values, these are common civilizational questions we've always faced. What kinds of information do we wish to believe? What kinds of information do we wish to restrain? What is the relationship between government and society? What is government's responsibility to society? What type of restraints should be placed upon the government? What is media's role in terms of providing oversight over various levels of those who hold power. These are common questions we face whether we live in the first century, the 21st century, or the 31st century. And it's important that while we talk about means for cooperation on these issues, it's most important for us to understand whether or not we share common values. If we don't share common values, one can still find ways to coexist. But certainly if we share common values, the possibility for cooperation is even deeper. So I congratulate all of you for taking the efforts this weekend to begin this journey. And I want to encourage you to continue to forge forward on this journey ahead, because it is too important for the world for us not to have these dialogues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Wu. Do you have time for questions or? Sorry, Professor Wu?
Yes, I can stay for questions. Minister, do you have time for questions? I know we intruded on your weekend.
It's very early in the morning, 8 o'clock, 8:43. Yes, happy to take questions.
Yes, thank you. So if anyone has any questions, they can either raise their hand in Zoom. 如果有问题，可以在 Zoom 里边举手。
There's a question, as I mentioned, there's students who are sitting outside the auditorium. So there's a question from a student next to me here. So I'll have her raise her question. I'll pass my phone to her.
Hello, everyone. So my question is going to be, my name is Alyssa. I'm from Boston University. So, so my question is, I understand that American and Chinese media is sort of segregated at the moment, just like mainland China people use different applications for the things that we use, like QQ for Spotify or Xiaohongshu for like Instagram. What role do you think that kind of like disconnected communication plays in the misunderstanding between American and Chinese common people?
Is this question for me or for Professor Wu?
It's open to anyone.
Minister, why don't you speak first, and then I can add additional comments if I have any.
Oh, yes. You talked about the segregation of media platforms. It is true that in the modern society, there are too many media outlets and the media platform we can use. As for example, for us as diplomats, we always read the Washington Post, New York Times, etc. It might be very, very boring for you. And you talk about social media like Twitter, like Xiaohongshu, or in China, we use Taobao to almost purchase everything. But I think it's quite natural. People feel they have the choice of using whatever media platform they would like to use, either to collect or gather information or to live their ordinary lives. I think it shows the advancement of the modern technology, which should be welcome by all. And at the same time, I also share your worry about different people using different platforms, which will result in the lack of common information. And when we hear very different stories about one single thing. Just as Professor Wu mentioned, why the Chinese students and the U.S. students will see a bloom in a different way that drifted into the U.S. airspace in a different way. So it makes people to people, in person communication and interaction even more important. So that's the reason, I guess, why myself and Professor Wu encouraged so much for in-person interaction between our two sides, our two countries, our two, the government officials and members of the Congress and representatives of the business community, and especially students. So that's the reason why both of us encourage so much for you to visit each other's country. And when you put aside Xiaohongshu or TikTok and whatever platform you like to use, and talk with each other and look into each other's eyes. And in that way, I think you will be able to understand each other better, and you will also have a chance to listen to each other better to nurture mutual understanding. Thank you very much.
Professor Wu, do you have anything to add?
So because we're not live, my phone is low on battery, so I will refrain from comments. Just to note that that the academic research has certainly shown that the segregation of information channels has led to divergent views within society. So one question is, of course, can you access the information? The second is, even if you have access, because there's so much information, what sources do you aggregate? I think one thing that's important to do is to ask people who read and believe something very different than you, what is it that they read? What is it that they see? And then read those sources so that you understand what is it that they're following. And then you can talk much more frankly to one another if you understand that. I'm sorry, if my phone dies, we may join on a different platform. Okay, so sorry.
Thank you so much. I think we are out of time for this event, so we should move on to the internet panel. But thank you, Professor Wu and Minister Xu, for your insightful comments. And we, I think, will transfer over in maybe 2 minutes. So thank you. If anyone has any more questions, I guess we could use like this a few minutes for that also.
Fudan students and Harvard students in the past semester, and also have been working together diligently to create a policy report regarding data privacy and security. And in the spirit of today's conference, which is indeed held over Zoom, we would like to address the various internet and data issues surrounding U.S. and China relations, especially in the post-COVID world. We have invited several guests from both the U.S. and China side to speak at this panel. Unfortunately, the U.S. guest, Bruce Schneier, is unable to make this conference last minute, so we will proceed with the 2 speakers from the Chinese side. feel free to introduce them right now.
Okay, greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Wei Lan from university, and it's my great honor to introduce our Chinese panelists. Now, first of all, I would like to introduce Dr. Wang Xiaofeng from Fudan University. As an associate professor at the Center for American Studies, he has long been engaged in research, U.S. politics, and foreign policy, cybersecurity, and cyber diplomacy. In 2015, he published his monograph, Cyber Strategy, a New Pillar of U.S. National Security. Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Yao Xu. Dr. Yao Xu is Junior Associate Professor at Fudan University Development Institute. His research focuses on digital society and industry governance, stakeholder data flows governance, and personal data protection. In 1990, he published his monograph, EU's Governance of Transported Data Flows, balancing free flow and regulated protection. Nonetheless, would you please express your ideas on our first question? U.S.-China cooperation on cyberspace issues is committed to carrying out on the basis of respecting each other's core interests and properly managing differences. So what do you think are the major differences between China and the U.S. in this regard, and how should they be managed? Dr. Wang, would you please open your microphone and answer this question first? President Wang? Could be open your microphone.
In that case, shall we move the question first to Dr. Yao for reply first?
Oh, I'm sorry, but I can't hear anything. Kevin, what did you say right now?
Can you hear me? In light of the technical difficulties with Dr. Wang, we can move to Dr. Yao to respond to the first question.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear it clearly.
Okay. I don't know if Professor Wang's devices has some problem there, but I'd like to share some point of view of mine to the first question. First of all, hello everyone. It's an honor to be invited to this panel, and I can't wait to hear your voice and exchange our views. I was intended to hear Professor Wang's speech regarding to this first question because it's most his major. And I would like to add some perspectives from the internet technology industry based on my research very briefly. Regarding the issue of cyberspace governance, I think both China and the United States have gone through a process of perception shaping and perception reshaping. As Professor Wang's research, there have been different understandings between the two sides about the nature of cyberspace and its related concepts and notions. These different understandings were based on the different internet basic capabilities when the two countries first encountered the cyberspace. I think this includes information infrastructure, the scale of startup technology companies, the investment capacity of venture capital, the cultivation of internet technology talents, and the maybe actual situation of the internet industry landing. The United States has an advantage in both the hardware and the software of cyberspace for sure from the very beginning. I think we do agree with that, while China is still in the process of catching up, even right now. However, it is worth noting that China's internet technology industry has developed rapidly over the past decades, I think, especially in the innovation and application of business and industry forms, which has given the industry more confidence in facing its own mentors, which is the US companies. The Chinese internet industry used to humbly call itself learning from the Silicon Valley maybe 10 years ago, but with its own development, it has also made many innovation breakthroughs in like e-commerce, electronic payments, and new energy vehicles, which have given China more confidence to involve the paradigm of internet governance. As I just mentioned, the understanding and concepts of cyberspace governance in both countries are continuously evolving. Therefore, as the internet industries of both countries continue to develop, their cyberspace governance will bridge many differences, but inevitably, new problems will arise. The Sino-US relationship is the most important bilateral relationship in the world. And as our topic suggests, it is crucial to objectively view the dynamic and inevitable differences in Sino-US cyberspace awareness, taking actions to manage and resolve the problems. I think the key to addressing the how question is to avoid falling into the trap of the pan-national security perception. And I will maybe expand the perception in the second question. And furthermore, they shall avoid the assumption that the other side is hostile. The cyber policy teams, the industry, and the academic communities of both countries need more face-to-face exchanges to advance more specific agendas and the projects, I think. Both sides need to form a cumulative effect by solving specific small problems in cyber issues to improve their cooperation environment. That's maybe the brief answer to the first question, the host.
Thank you, Professor. And now we think Professor Wang is here now. So could you please, Professor Wang, answer our first question?
Thank you, Professor Yao Xu. When I face the difficulties to connect it, and glad to be here. And according to the questions mentioned above, I think there are many differences between US and China on cyber issues. It is very important to understand these differences accurately, view them objectively, and manage them properly. The fundamental difference is how to view the nature of the cyberspace. The US government has put forward many notions to the cyberspace. The Clinton administration called it information superhighway or National Information Infrastructure, NII. Then the Clinton administration said global, GII means Global Information Infrastructure. During Bush administration, cyberspace was regarded as a kind of national virtual assets and the fifth operation field. The Obama administration used the global commons, then the globally connected domain, or important goal of natures. China, on the other hand, has taken a cautious attitude for the beginning of linking to the internet. 1990s. China emphasized that cyberspace should not become a threat to its sovereignty, national security, and developing interests. In 2009, in a white paper, China's Internet status, the concept of Internet sovereignty was proposed. And in 2014, the concept of cyberspace sovereignty was further proposed. China is also pushing more countries to understand and accept its position and proposition at the bilateral and international levels. The understanding above has led to the differences between the two countries on cyberspace governance. We know that a consensus was reached at the World Summit on Information Society, WSIS, in 2003, that public policy on cyberspace should be formulated under national sovereignty, and a multi-stakeholder model was formed. In the actual process, the US tends to see this model as a global governance. That is, governments, the private sector, communities, and individuals jointly participate in the governance of cyberspace. We may call it globalism. However, China prefers an interpretation of international governance, which recognize that all stakeholders have the right to participate in global governance of cyberspace. But governments of all countries should play a leading role in it. We may call it internationalism. Due to such differences, US and China faced many obstacles for cooperating on cyberspace governance. For example, the World Internet Conference hosted by the Chinese government since 2014, it has been resisted by the US government from the beginning. While the Alliance for the Future of the Internet initiated by the US government also take addressing China's challenge as its main goal, which regards China as a threat to a free and open internet. Differences in cognition and rules also reflected in the handling of some events involving their respective major interests. The internet has been developed for exactly 30 years from 1993. At the beginning, many US technology companies invested in China and sought cooperation, which largely promoted the rapid development of China's internet. The technological and commercial cooperation involving the internet continues to deepen as cyberspace itself gradually expands from technology and economy to social, political, and military fields. The two countries increasingly regard cyberspace as their core interests, national interests, and major concerns. And its importance and sensitivity continue to rise. Cooperation between the US and China in cyberspace is facing more and more challenges. 2009 was an important watershed year. In November 2009, when President Obama visited China, the first stop was Shanghai. At that time, the US team managed to live broadcast the dialogue between Obama and the Fudan students to the world through the internet. This action raised China's doubt about the US intention to use the internet to influence China domestic politics. Since then, the Obama administration has declared that the internet is a new arrow in the US diplomatic bag. The US ambassador to China, Joe Husband, has said he will use the internet to change China. And Hillary Clinton delivered the speeches on internet freedom. For China, the internet poses a challenge to institutional stability. In January 2010, Google announced that it would withdraw its search engine business from China when the US government accused China of violating the fair trade principle of WTO. The Chinese internet companies in the US began to be affected. Later, some US companies such as Cisco, Uber, and Amazon also withdraw their business from Chinese market. The business of some Chinese companies such as Huawei in the US market have also been restricted. This month, 10 years ago, was a big blow to US-China cooperation on cyber issues. And US cybersecurity company named Mandiant published a report alleging that Chinese military officers participated in the theft of commercial secrets of American technology companies and research institutions. In the next year, US DOJ announced the indictment of Chinese army men, which led to the most serious conflict between the US and China over cyber issues. And its impact has been so far. Then many dialogues and working groups is established, but most of them were suspended due to the trade war with China in Trump administration. And bilateral government level cooperation is still weakened till now. The cyber issues are very important to a healthy and stable US-China relation. Regarding to manage difference and promote cooperation in the context of current situation, I would like to share some ideas. One is to narrow cognitive differences through dialogues. It is necessary to understand through dialogue how some differences affect the core interests of the other party. Managing difference, 管控分歧, has always been a key word for Chinese government in handling US-China relations. And Biden's so-called setting guardrails also contains the meaning to avoid differences leading to conflicts. Biden was said to be clear and honest where we disagree and work together where our interests intersect. The second idea is to restart cooperation projects by reviewing history. China and the US have set many cyber-related cooperation agendas through bilateral negotiations. Most of them have been stopped, but the relevant people and institutions still exist. Fudan Center for Historical and Geography Studies and Harvard Yale Institute had a cooperative project named China Historical Geography Information System, CGGIS. This information system still running today. This project was launched in 2001. Fudan and Harvard both pay great attention to this project. In 2009, when the Chinese 60th National Day, this project was exhibited in Beijing as a gift. The one of two of the Ministry of Education of China. And all the party and state leaders at that time watched the project. The project manager, Lex Burma at the Harvard Center for Harvard Center for Geographic Analysis. I visited his lab in 2009 when he is very confident about this project. And I have checked this project online. I find the final version of this project stopped in 2016. I don't know why this project is not updated, but I wish Harvard and Fudan resume this project in the future. Third is to establish new cooperation models through innovation. The differences on cyber issues are related to the governance models of two countries. As I mentioned just now, we know that for some global public issues such as climate change, anti-terrorism, nuclear proliferation, etc., international regime is an important solution. On issues such as cybersecurity and critical infrastructure protection, the US and China can try to promote the establishment of such an international regime. Maybe we can agree to build an umbrella that we cover the core interests of both sides. I stop here. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wang, for your response. We will have time for another question. And this time we can have Dr. Yao start again. So the question is focusing directly on data privacy and data security, which is the topic that the Fudan students and Harvard students addressed in their report. How do you view the increasing data privacy and security concern associated with the internet between the two countries? And how do you think these two countries can grasp the boundary between regulation and use of data? And what do you think are the biggest challenges facing equitable data use between US and China?
Maybe I'll be the first one to answer this question. Okay. Actually, I think the biggest issue regarding privacy and data security in the field of Sino-US relations is national security concerns of digital governance. Cases such as TikTok and Huawei reflect the enormous impact of this concern. The logic behind this concern is actually based on the similarity of the digital governance policies of China and the US, which may seem counterintuitive, as many people would assume that the privacy and data security policies of the two countries are vastly different. But in fact, in recent years, the logic of privacy and data security governance in both China and the United States can be seen as a pattern of, I think, the developing first and then regulating, or at least strengthening regulation and governance systems during development. This is also understandable, I think, because strong regulation may inhibit innovation to some extent when new technologies and business models have not yet emerged. And pre-established rules may not be specific enough. Both China and the US have been taking frequent actions against both domestic and foreign technology companies in recent years, with anti-monopoly, privacy, and data security being top priorities. This change is both internal to the development of the digital industry and I think external to changes in the international relationship landscape. First, the internal aspect of this change stems from the fact that global innovation and technological development have not met our expectations before, resulting in the maybe the disappointing and conflicting public sentiment. revolutionary technological breakthroughs in areas such as artificial intelligence, blockchain, cloud computing, quantum computing, and maybe biotechnology have been slow, and the internet giants and platforms that were once highly anticipated are now being viewed by many as more focused on innovation, or maybe not innovation, maybe focused more on create in business models rather than genuine technological innovation. These objects of the scrutiny include not only China's significant criticism for its handling of the user's data, which means each company in each country may make mistakes, right? But we should know that the cyber sovereignty and the local storage of data were previously emphasized concepts implemented by China, but the logic is based on equal cooperation and specific rules. The United States previously had a long-standing attitude of freedom towards transporter data flows due to the dominance of American tech companies worldwide. However, with the progress of China's internet and technology industry, Chinese companies, Huawei, have become how to say the sacrificial lambs for national security concerns. The company which has nothing to do with the Chinese government at all, like TikTok, is targeted as the next lamb. This raises a crucial question. Where is the boundary of national security concerns in the field of digital governance and cooperation? Will the generalization of national security boundaries hidden competition and innovation? I think the answer is yes, for sure, because in an environment lacking or even devoid of competition, the innovation steps will become very slow and maybe slower. And resources will flow towards monopolies at a very faster rate. Therefore, the privacy and cybersecurity disputes between China and the United States are fundamentally influenced by the national security concept. What we need to do, I think, is to put development as the first priority, especially given the uncertainty of global economy recovery after the COVID-19 pandemic, which requires joint efforts from China and the United States. The development of the digital industry is not a zero-sum game, and there is still plenty of room for advancement in digital technology. Transporter data flows, I think, play a very, very huge role in the economic and social development. Maybe not only China, not only the United States, but the world as a whole. The first step in Sino-US digital cooperation, I think, is to jointly recognize the important role of digital cooperation in the development of both countries, and then to rebuild strategic and industrial trust, avoiding interference in industry development using non-market and non-competitive means. As far as I know, Chinese tech companies now they pay the most attention to compliance when conducting business activities abroad, especially data compliance, making every effort to comply with the data laws and standards of the host country. And there are successful business practice in China by companies like Apple and Tesla. Their experience demonstrates that transporter data flows and the data security protection between China and the US can seek and build good rule frameworks. I hope there will be more successful examples like this and provide good references for the policymakers in both countries. That's all. Thank you.
Professor Wang, if we could move to you to answer this question.